Hands
his ankle there.
from
Nice,
big
nice
left
kick.
Here comes Jordan.
Jordan come back with those hands again.
Welcome back, everyone. Episode... I forgot to check what number episode it was. Some episode, I don't know. We've done like, I don't know how many episodes now. It's episode something of Combat Chat podcast. Still in week, I think tomorrow we will cross into week 13 of Sydney lockdown. Still here, still loving life. Looking, I hope, slightly less homeless this week. I decided to take the clippers to the facial hair, but I left the curls up top for now. So it's a bit of a gradual process. Some beautiful summer weather in Sydney town for the weekend as restrictions start to ease, but you're allowed to go and have a picnic now, which is a nice gift from our friends in the New South Wales government. Looking like there's some light at the end of the tunnel for training and gyms and stuff like that. So time's still a little bit tough, but the vibes are good this weekend in the sunshine. Hope you're all doing well out there, of course. By checking in this week, just myself on the hosting side. Shane's enjoying the sunshine with his family. So we had to call in an all-star guest to make up for lack of hosts. Joining me from the nation's capital is Mr. Max McVicker. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Good. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So you made the wise decision to leave the most unrestricted state in Australia and go straight into a Canberra lockdown. So tell us how you're handling that, how are things going for you with restrictions and whatnot.
I think we're in week 5 now.
Amateur numbers, yeah.
week 5 of lockdown. We went into lockdown with 4 cases in the first day, and now it's like an average of 20 to 30 every day. And it just doesn't seem to be changing. Like, yeah, it's just staying the same. So they've extended the lockdown for another month, which sucks, but it is what it is, I suppose. We're just getting by.
Been seeing you guys on Instagram getting in your park sessions and stuff like that. Yeah, you're enjoying working out in the sunshine a little bit.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool actually, because obviously we've trained so long like a certain way, and like it's almost been like a good way of like bonding with a couple of people from the gym. Like I haven't seen David in like, man, there's a picture of me and him in like Langkawi in 2011 or something like that, and I'm like 3 foot tall and he's 17, so like we haven't seen each other since then. So it's good to like just have some one-on-one time with some people and do some stuff there. It's like the bright part of a pretty bad situation, I suppose.
And how have you been settling into we'll get into a little bit in a second, sort of, you know, what kind of went into the move and stuff like that, but overall how have you found settling into the ACT?
Man, like so far I've loved it. Like, obviously the lockdown's kind of put a damper on things, but it's been like the first time for me for a load of things. Like I've moved into my own like apartment and stuff like that, like moved out. Like just like the independence has been really cool, and then working in the gym full time and feeling real secure, and then having the training that I came here for and the partners that I came to train with. It's just been like everything that I'd hoped for. But yeah, the lockdown's just like paused everything. So it's like, that's a bit poo really. But so far the actual training and everything's been really, really good. It's been wicked.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. And it does look like you guys are making the most of it. I think the spin that you put on the whole lockdown is it's really important. Like it's what you make it, really, right?
Yeah.
So look, we'll get into kind of more you and your new setup and stuff like that. But I know a lot of people that our people that listen to the show are pretty hardcore Australian Muay Thai fans, and anyone else who's listening is just listening because you're on anyway. So most people who are here probably are aware of you. But take us back a little bit. You know, you're a young guy. Are you 20?
Yeah.
20? Yeah, 20 years old, super experienced. You know, you're in Canberra now, just come over from Western Australia. Any listeners that are unaware, that's actually not a Western Australian accent. So fill in the gaps for us a little bit. Take us through your kind of Muay Thai journey. How'd you get started? And just run us through that, if you will.
So I started in Manchester, England. So that's where I was born, like where I grew up and stuff. So I started Muay Thai when I was 5, with my dad and a woman called Trisha, who still teaches over there. She has her own gym and stuff, but real from the start, like taught real good fundamentals. Like Trisha and my dad originally taught like a load of real good juniors. Like we had a real strong junior team. Like people like Neve Keenahan from Frank's gym. We started together. Like she was 7 and I was 5, and we used to train together and things like that.
Did she have a wicked fight recently? On your cow?
The head kick KOs.
Yeah.
She's like, man, every fight is wicked. Like she's so good, and like if you watch her, you can actually see like fundamentally you can see like similarities between her and I. We're both southpaw and kick similar, and like a lot of the things we learned like as children have just kind of stayed.
Yeah.
So you can see that we were kind of taught correct from the start. But then we moved from England to Australia, to WA in Perth, when I was 11. And when we got here, we kind of like looked around different gyms, and we went to, like, everything was a little bit far away. Like we were in Mandurah, so about an hour and a half away from some of the other gyms up in Perth.
Yeah.
So like gyms like the Pit and Riddlers were just like too far away at the time for like me as an 11-year-old to go back and forth every day.
Yeah.
So basically I went to a local gym called Excel, and they had like a small fight team, but eventually my dad took over my training again at that gym. And basically created a fight team there, and decided one day that he wanted to just break off from the gym and create his own thing. From there was just a few that followed, like Josh Day and like just a couple of others, and then eventually got his own premises, and we like I trained with my dad and stuff up until about the age of like 16, and then I went to Petchyindee in Thailand. And just, well, like I came back, and after that, like stayed for a little bit. I had a couple of more fights under my dad. I had my like a WBC state title when I turned 18 against Stephen Kirk.
Yeah.
And then I had my fight against Zach Heinesen for the WBC national. And then after that, I made the move I moved out of home, and I moved up to like central Perth, and trained a little bit with like Daniel Dawson and stuff at Legends Academy.
Legends, yeah.
And yeah, I was there for a little while before I came to Canberra. So I had 2 fights at Legends. And yeah, like I had my fight against Bach in, I think it was in Queensland. I don't know where it was.
I mean, that was in Victoria.
Victoria. Man, the Eastern States is still a little blur to me. I don't know the difference.
That was in Melbourne, right? That was like hardcore promotions, wasn't it?
Yeah, hardcore.
Yeah.
They're all a blur. Like when you're in WA, the whole eastern side of the map just blurs into one.
It's just one place. Like I was on the east.
It's just one massive thing that you fly to fight.
I mean, like that's comparatively, like Western Australia is the same size as like Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria. So when you think of it like that, that makes sense. You're going to Eastern Australia.
We just fly over east to fight.
Yeah.
That's like But yeah, I had a couple of fights there, and then obviously I had my most recent fight against Singpayak, which was like real cool experience. But after that, during coming up to that fight, the opportunity kind of arose with Kieran. I was like at home and I just stumbled across one of his like Muay U chats. I think it was the first one where he's talking about like I can't remember what he's talking about. I can't, like, it's some topic to do with like that he was talking with Josh about, and I remember watching it and just thinking like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like I really get what he's saying. And then I like sent him a message and just said like, oh, like I really agreed with what you were saying. Like we're on the same wavelength. And then we just chatted back and forth for a bit about like our opinions on different topics in Muay Thai. And then he just randomly gave me a ring one day, and we were chatting even more. And then we got into like my job and work, and in the current climate with like job security.
Yeah.
And obviously at the time there at Legends, I was technically self-employed because I was like on the PT kind of pay like thing. And then with Kieran, like there was a totally different opportunity there to work at Muay U. And then obviously the opportunity to train with like David and Josh and stuff, and train with Kieran after seeing some of the stuff he'd done. And yeah, like that opportunity was there. So that kind of pushed the move towards Canberra. Like I flew over the day after my fight with Singh and spent a week at Muay U. And then when I got back, I was just like, I'm going. Like, there's ever a time to do it, it's now. So
yep,
just went for it.
Yeah, like a very good opportunity that not a lot of gyms could really offer with Kieran in that, you know, it's not just like you go and train there and, you know, pick up a couple of PTs. Like it's a structured kind of salaried, you know, it's all on the books kind of job. Obviously runs a great facility too, very smart guy. We're friends with Kieran. So I call him and annoy him on the phone. At least a few times a year. Kieran gets to listen to my mental breakdowns. So he's good like that. So there's a few to get into, and do really want to zone in on kind of, you know, this move to Muay U, even though it's kind of been on pause. But you mentioned across kind of your career, you spent some time with Petchyindee. So if we walk back a little bit to there, how long were you in Thailand all up? You know, what was that kind of experience like?
Like, man, training at Petchyindee is like weird. It's like it's crazy. Like, I suppose I went back and forth to Thailand a few times, but went to Petchyindee once. But going to Petchyindee was like a crazy experience. When I was there, I walked in on the first day, and I got to my room and put my bags down and stuff, and then I just had like this moment where I was like I don't know if I can do this. Like, it's way too, like, it was way too big, and it was like it's like the Petchyindee building. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like 5 stories.
Yeah.
Like hauled these massive bags up 5 stories. And like nobody speaking English. And I walked into my room, like bunking with everyone. And I just sat on the floor and was like, I got like the first night shakes, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I even doing this? And then I got up the next morning and I walked into the showers, and it at 5 a.m. they come around, wake us all up, and I walked into the showers, and it was like Pet Morakot, Pet Dam, Saw Growl, like all in the showers. And it was like real weird as a kid. It was like, I've only ever seen you guys on TV. Like, yeah. And then I was like asking for selfies in the showers with Pet Morakot and Pet Dam and stuff like that. And then, but yeah, like I had like a real, like small fight there. When I first got there, I took that like on like 3 days notice and just kind of jumped in at Asia Teak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I fought there too.
Yeah, I won that fight. It was like nobody cared. Like, obviously, with it being such a small fight and like Petchyindee being so big. But then I got thrown into like another fight that I got like 3 weeks to get ready for after that fight. And I wasn't sure like anything about it really, but they just come and took my picture. And I think it was a bit of a setup fight, because like on the poster, it was like real, his picture was like super good, like real good, like photo. And heaps of people came to watch, and Boat was there. And I was just like, this isn't a big enough fight for Boat to have like cared about. And all of a sudden,
for people that are unaware, sorry to interrupt, Boat being the Petchyindee kind of boss.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
just in case people are unfamiliar.
Yeah.
So not an actual Boat.
Yeah, because like Boat isn't like, doesn't talk to you, you know, like he's so important that like you see him and everyone kind of just moves out of the way. Like,
a very influential figure in Thai Muay Thai.
Yeah, like nobody will you won't go and just start a conversation with Bo or say hi to him if he walks past you in the hall. You like put your head down and turn your head away. Like he'll come in the gym at the end of the session with a stick and you're just like dreading he doesn't come past you. But then he like turns up to my fight as I'm walking out. We turned up late to the venue, and it was like we turned up late to the venue, and you know Teddy Bear, his name's Mai. So we turned up late to the venue, and he's like quickly throws like a groin guard on me, throws some shorts on me, like half wraps my hands and throws some gloves on. Then they like chuck a monk on me, and then I'm like waiting to walk out, like not warmed up whatsoever, and they just throw me out. I'm like, oh, it's one of those fights, don't care, like it's fine. And then as I'm walking out, I just spotted Bo like in the back of the audience, and I was like, what is he doing here? Like this is way too, like he shouldn't care about this. But it turns out the promoter had set it up for like he was friends with Bo. The promoter had set it up with Bo. So it's bigger than I anticipated. And then I fought the first round in that fight, and Bo wasn't really saying anything. And then as soon as he saw me kick, he was like ran into the corner and started shouting in my corner. He's like, left kick. And then after that, he was just like in my corner the whole way through the fight. And then I won that fight by KO in the second round. And then the next morning, like I felt pretty good. It was like a good fight, and I felt like I'd impressed and everything. And then the next morning, he was doing this like massive press interview. There was like heaps of people in the gym. And then it all finished, and I kind of just stood. I wanted to go into the room, but like just stood outside the room for like half an hour. And then as he walked out the room, I walked in, and he turned to me and was like, "Oh, you fought well yesterday. I want to put you on one championship." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I want to sponsor you. When can you come back?" And because he was like, "Oh, when you're leaving?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know." He's like, and then I ended up leaving quite soon after. But then he was like, "When can you come back?" He was like, "I want you to move here. Like, I want you to live at Petchyindee." And I was like, I had another like blown head moment. I was like, I don't know, like I need to go home and figure this out. But like he said, but like, don't worry, the offer's always there. Like you don't need to stress about it. And then stayed for a bit longer. And like, yeah, it kind of was just a bit surreal. But then I had my 2 fights when I came back with my dad, and then COVID was like hit. And it was like, no way I could get back there. No point in going either. So like everything changed, like the whole dynamic changed, because the idea was obviously like when you get offered to go to Petchyindee, you go to Petchyindee.
You go,
yeah. Like you don't really like turn it down or decide not to go. But I had a word with Savas before I left to go back, and he was saying to me, like you don't need to rush to come back. Like he said, that offer is there, and it will be there. Like it won't just disappear because you haven't been around for a while. Like as long as you don't go to like another gym near us, then like the offer is still there. He said, go and beat the best in your country, be the best in your country, and then come back. And then you know that you have done that and not run away from any competition. So that's kind of like what I went home to do. I fought for the WBC state title and then the Australian one, and I was working my way through, and it was like COVID. So it was like that kind of all went out the window anyway. And that's when like I started looking for alternate like ways and options of places to go down. And then
interesting, right? So I guess it's always like whatever you're doing in life right now, it's interesting to think like if all of this hadn't happened, where would I be right now? You know, so I guess had lockdowns and whatnot kind of not come about, you probably would have got on a plane and got yourself back to Petchyindee for a longer stint.
I'd have been a Thai workhorse.
and how like kind of useful to have like someone like kind of Savas to get advice from on that kind of thing, right? Because he's obviously done the long-term Thailand thing.
Him and Dan, like when I was there, were like, you know, like my two older brothers.
McGowan?
Dan McGowan. Like Dan was the one who was like, oh mate, you can do it. Like I know it's hard. the first, like, when you first get here is the difficult part, trust me. And he's like, I've done this, you know, he did it since he was like 15 too, like went to Thailand and back, and I'd watched like his old Lumpini fights and things like that and been quite inspired by that. So he's someone I like really looked up to, and he supported me a lot emotionally. And Sabas was like the one who was like get up in the morning and run with me, because like, and then if I didn't, he'd be like super on my back, but like in a good way, you know, like he would be really, really, really on my back because he's a hard worker. And he knew, I think he knew I was good, so he wanted me to turn up and push myself as much as I could. So he really would push me, and still does. Like when we talk and when we message, Sabas is one of those people that will always speak his mind. Like he'll always tell you how it is. And so if I ever need advice, like there's a couple of people that I go to, that are like, you know, fighters that are in similar positions to me that are just like a few years older.
Yeah.
Like if I ever have like something to ask, of course I'll ask like Kieran.
Yeah.
And like sometimes like ask my dad, but also like some of the first people I message is like Sabas. Like every now and again I'll message Dan, and I'll message George as well, like George Mann.
Yeah.
So there's like those guys are the type of people that I message if like I need advice, because they've been in positions that I am now in, and like know what to do most of the time.
Yeah, and like I think you realize like the longer you're around a sport like this one, it's so helpful. You know, even it's so essential to have people around that are gonna tell you, not just people that are more experienced than you or whatever to go to for advice, but people that are going to tell you advice and cut the shit. Like, you know, I think everyone's like, I go to these people for advice, but like really that's just people that are going to say nice things to them.
Yeah.
Like you really need someone around that's going to be like, you know, oh, this is what I'm having a problem with. And maybe the response is like, man, you're being an idiot. You know?
Yeah. Have you ever asked for George's opinion on something?
Yes.
It's all, you'll always get the truth from George. That's what I always like. If I have something to ask George about, like if I get him to watch my fights and stuff, like he'll always be dead honest, and I always respect that. Like out of all Australian fighters in Australia, he's the one I look to be like, you know what I mean? Like the skill and things like that. He's someone like I look up to, and what he's accomplished and things like that. So to be able to get straight advice from him, sometimes it hurts as well. Like when George, like sometimes George will say something and I don't know if he realizes. He might realize, but he says some stuff and it's like like that hurt, but you need to hear it, you know, like need to be told sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest kind of weaknesses you can have as a fighter is like if you're sort of hurt by advice that is like not filtered to be nice to you, because like that's the like if you really can't just be told what you need to hear, you're going to miss out on some of the most useful advice that you're going to get. Like when I hear fighters being like, oh, I've stopped working with this trainer because he told me I'm not good at this, it's like that's, you know,
I think that was part of like why I needed to come to Muay U's. Like I think and George and I did have a conversation about this. Like it's the same for him with Darren. Like we need someone to just tell us. There's a lot of people like for our age, we know a lot about the sport, but we need someone to like reel us in and just say like, you do this now, like, and be told, you know, get used to being told that this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to act. And because sometimes like personally, I get too big for my boots and think I know everything, you know, like, and I forget that like sometimes someone just needs to come and tell me, like smack me around the ears, you know, you don't know everything, settle down. Like just need to be told.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like an underappreciated element of like the fighter trainer dynamic is like when you get like a, you know, a really strong, knowledgeable young fighter, someone like yourself that really develops this real classy style and just studies the game and learns a lot about Muay Thai. Like it's very easy, I guess, for the coach to kind of let that person outgrow them. Like that's an issue that I see when I look around sometimes. Is like, I think probably like I mean, like I'm not a coach, so I mean, I don't, I guess, really understand it. not a coach of fighters anyway, but it's like, I think one of the most challenging kind of fighters to train is one that's like really immersed in it. Like you don't have to tell them about the sport. They're going to go and learn it, because like the challenge is then on you to kind of grow with them, like stay in a place. Yeah. But also I think, you make a good point that like fighters who do know a lot have to understand that you can't run your own shit. Like there's a reason that like what elite fighter has just no coach, because they just know a lot.
Yeah. That's like, I think like Kieran as well. The good thing is like Kieran and I are both well aware of like my strengths, like as a fighter, like mentally as well. Like I'm real strong mentally. You can throw me into like a deep end situation and I've got bags of confidence. Like I'll never be complacent when I fight or just have a bad performance. Like it doesn't happen. I know that I'm super consistent and all that type of thing, but also like just letting that confidence turn into overconfidence. And then Kieran saying like, oh, you think you're just way better than that person, but they can be awkward and you need to take this into account and that into account because you're undermining their ability because you think you're too good. You know, that type of conversation is necessary every now and again to just pull someone like me back into line.
Yeah, that's maybe like a not so talked about element of like you think about like coaching someone being about, you know, helping them believe in themselves and stuff like that. But then it's like there is that other point is like, how as a trainer do you manage confidence like that line? Because fighting takes a level of like, you know, almost foolish confidence sometimes. Like you have to go into fights like I can beat, you know, you have to look at the best person in the world and be like, I can beat that guy. And even like you have to, this is where like kind of some of the delusion can come from, is because like, you know, if you take a loss, you still have to come back from it and be like, I could beat that guy if we fought again. Like, you know, it's not like
it's like that bulletproof mentality that you've got to have.
And how do you kind of allow someone to develop, as you say, that bulletproof mentality without letting them kind of, it is such a fine line between confidence and kind of delusion, but like you've got to walk it, you know, that's the line you have to walk.
That's that like strong trainer fighter relationship that you got to build.
Yeah, and it's because, like, I think the other thing, you see this sometimes, like, I think sometimes trainers, like, they know they've got a good fighter, and so they kind of just start to let them run the show a little bit like that. Like, I think as a trainer, you cannot get to a place where you're not just going to slap your fighter around the head.
Yeah, and that's
maybe not literally, maybe literally.
That's someone that I am as well. Like, I am a bad example of that. But anybody who knows Kieran knows that won't happen. You know, and that's like one of the, obviously there's a million reasons why I'm at Muay U, but one of them that's very important to me is that he runs his show and he, you know, like, he will never be afraid to give me the criticism and tell me exactly what's what.
Yeah, and I think what I like a lot about kind of the gym, you know, for lack of a better word, you know, the kind of what Kieran's built in Muay U is that, like, I think he as a trainer would never allow a fighter to be bigger than Muay U. And I think that's what sometimes trainers can kind of get wrong, is they really do allow, in terms of importance and preference, an individual to be kind of the focal point rather than the organization at large, the team at large, you know what I mean? Like he was never trying to,
I suppose like the weird thing is because you see it a lot in MMA, like the fighters get so big that you don't even know the trainers' names and stuff like that. I feel like every fighter that I know in Muay Thai, if I know the fighter, I know the coach, or I semi know the gym, you know, like most of the time. It might be because I know them personally, but in MMA, even most of the fighters I know, I don't know who their coaches are, you know, like I know two or three coaches in MMA, but like the I suppose we have more of like a football kind of comparison where like no player's ever bigger than the club. Like Manchester United, like if a player thinks they're too big, like there's been players in the past that have been kicked out of the club because they think they're bigger than the club, you know. I feel like we follow more of that kind of dynamic than say MMA.
Yeah, and I guess it's largely kind of like it's for money reasons as well.
Yeah,
like once the fighters are on that much money, they can be a little bit more transactional.
Mm.
And then that's like just a dangerous kind of scale up of the idea because like a fighter just has all the resources, just be like, you're not telling me what I want to hear.
Look at Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
But I suppose he's stuck with the same camp though, right?
Still with the same trainer.
He's just nuts, that's all.
Yeah, just gone batshit crazy. Okay, so you kind of just moving. You've had like a couple of it's been since you mentioned like that kind of move into the adults was started strong with a WBC title fight as you mentioned against Stephen Kirk. There's a few things to kind of get into because it's been I guess a somewhat tumultuous ride in some ways. An interesting story. I'd just like to get kind of a couple of stories that have been around kind of in your words. So you mentioned as well that you fought Zach Innocent in one of your early adult fights, but you guys fought each other and then went on to be team partners.
Zach's like my best mate in Muay Thai. Like him and I was just talking to him this morning. But Zach and I, we fought in I don't know, like a few years ago now, like maybe 2.5 years ago. And yeah, we fought for the WBC national title and Muaythai Grand Prix in the October or November, and then by February we were like mates and we fought on the like rogue tag team together against Nung and B, I think the two Thais, or Konkian Lek. And we have a bit of a running joke because I left him in the round in 4-4s alone because I dislocated my knee in that fight in the first round.
Well, let me just take a step back as we get into it because not everyone listening will understand. In Australia, I think we still do. I think it's just a little bit less common. We have a promotion called Rogue up in Queensland, of course, that will run tag team Muay Thai fights. We have spoken a little bit. If you're unfamiliar, it's 4 4-minute rounds, and it is what it sounds like.
So
it's
5 4s.
Sorry, 5 4-minute rounds. I don't know why I said 4. 5 4-minute rounds. To allow for you to switch. And it is like a WWE style tag team match. You touch gloves with your partner, they hop in, the referee makes you swap sides so you can't instantly
so you can't just chain swap.
It is what it sounds like. There have been some pretty fun tag team fights, like there's been a couple of cool ones. This one would have been really good. It was good, but it would have been a good tag team rather than
I think, man, in all honesty, Zach went pretty much the 5 rounds before it got stopped from like a cut that shouldn't have stopped the fight. And man, like he nearly beat the two of them together. If Zach and I were in there, man, it wouldn't have lasted the 5 rounds. Not a chance. Like it wouldn't have gone the way it did at all. It was just one of those freak accidents that like happens and you can't do anything about.
Yeah, it was a real kind of freak moment as well. It wasn't like just an awkward kind of thing in the clinch that dislocated your knee. Was that
so my knee popped out. I was pretty lucky actually considering the situation. So it popped out and it was on the side of my leg, and I remember he tried to sweep me and I actually jumped over the sweep and he hooked the left, like my left leg, and I landed back on my right. And the right just didn't support the weight of my leg. And my kneecap went to the right and my knee went to the left. And I landed on my back. And I remember just like I'd got in about 50 seconds before that. So I had like no adrenaline going through me. I hadn't been hit. And I remember just being like in immense pain. Like it burned and hurt like so badly. But I broke the patella on the bone behind it. and had like minor MCL damage. So the bone was broken and I didn't need any surgery. Just had to rehab real hard. So like considering the situation, it got pretty lucky because there was no little to no ligament or like damage or anything like that.
Yeah, how long were you kind of out of action for with that?
Well, man, I had a bad run because I did that in the February. And then everything with like, I don't know if COVID didn't happen then, but like I went through the rehab stage and just like really went for it. And then I was matched. I think my next fight was meant to be against Roy Wills.
Which was when I was talking a tumultuous runner, this was the next kind of going to that story.
October against Roy. So like I rehabbed super hard for like 2-3 months, and then I was back to Muay Thai after like 2.5, I think. I was probably like kicking and stuff before I was meant to, because that's just like
that's just the way.
Yeah. But yeah, I was back to sparring maybe 2-3 months, 3 months after, probably about 3 months. But like sparring,
that's pretty quick.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Like I got pretty lucky, but also like I was like 110% on top of my rehab. Like I really went for it. And I still am. Like I prehab super hard. Like I'm real disciplined with my strength and conditioning, like 3 times a week. But then I got to the Roy fight, which was towards the end of the year. I don't know if it was October. I think it was end of October or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And then weighed in for that fight, and everything went perfect for that fight. Like it was absolutely like awesome. And it was like this was my big break, you know, like fighting Roy Wills. Like
that was the big one, yeah. That was kind of like
this was the I'm gonna be on the map now. Like
the young gun stepping up against the legend kind of fight, that sort of situation, yeah.
And like I was ready for that, like super ready. And like I suppose people got to see that when I fought Singh, but like that was there when I was meant to fight Roy, but we didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
One of the cool things was like obviously I never got to fight Roy, and I'll explain in a second. But when I did fight Singh, Roy was scoring the fight, he was judging the fight. And as I got out of the ring, he jumped out of the desk and come and like kind of put his arm around me, and he was like, "Oh, you proved you belong with them boys tonight." And I was like, it meant a lot because after everything that happened, like I copped quite a bit of shit off some people. Like I copped quite a bit of flack off some people, and had to deal with that. But what like kind of happened was the weight cut and everything was actually really good. Like it wasn't that big a weight cut. It was my first weight cut with a proper dietitian.
Yeah.
And like I wasn't on like a ton of food or anything like that, but like the weight cut was safer than any weight cut I'd done in the past. And so got to the weigh-in and everything was fine, and like ate and everything, and then I got home that night and tried to sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and I was tossing and turning. And like I just felt stiff like through my neck and like real off, couldn't sleep, and my stomach was like pushing food up and down, like it felt like I was in like indigestion. And then I didn't sleep the whole night. I ended up waking my girlfriend up at the time, Carissa, and basically she felt my neck here, and she was like Max, it's making like squidging noises. Like it's like making noises, like it's like farting noises basically whenever she pushed on my neck. And I was like, that's weird, man. Like we were like, maybe it's fluid, which is the dumbest thing. Like, and she started like rubbing it out. So like we were trying to rub out this fluid. And then we called Paddy, the doctor in WA, Paddy Golden. And he was like, yeah, that's not good. He was like, that's air. It's not fluid, it's air that's leaked from somewhere. And we were like, oh God. So like went straight to A&E, and I was in my mind, I was like, I'm still fighting. Like we'll get checked. It'll be minor. It'll be one of those things that you just like, think is a big deal, and then it's not. We got into the hospital, and I feel like the moment that we got there and they asked me what had happened, they knew that I wasn't fighting, but they didn't realize how big a deal that was, that like I wasn't fighting. Like,
yeah.
They thought
they
it was
don't really
competition.
understand the context.
And,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't play footy on a Sunday.
It's like that. They thought it was like that. And so they didn't tell me. And I was like, so they sent me through to get, I can't remember what it's called when you get is it CT scan when they make you drink the stuff? I don't know what they call it, but you basically you drink this liquid, and then like it shows where it travels to, and basically it showed a hole in my esophagus. So what had happened was like I had indigestion so bad when I was asleep at that night that like I'd swallowed my food, and for some reason it was going up and down in my throat, back and forth, so much that it rubbed a hole through my esophagus and then leaked air through and into my heart cavity. So the bad part about that is like all of this part of your body, like where your heart and your lungs and stuff are, outside of it is sterile.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing from the outside environment. Bacteria can't get to it. And as soon as air gets out of anything inside, it goes into that sterile cavity, and there's a huge chance of infection. It'll just kill you. And so as soon as they saw that, they were like, oh yeah, like you're not fighting. And I was like, well, no, I've got to fight. I was like, I can't not fight. I was like, how bad is this? Like, what's the, like, am I going to come back with a really, really sore throat? Am I going to come back with like coughing up blood? Like, I don't mind, like, it's fine. And then they were like, if we let you fight, there's like a 70% chance you'll die. If
not great odds.
Fight. And I was like, there was like a moment where I was like, no.
So what you're saying
actually,
is like, there's a 30% chance I won't die.
Yeah, there was a part of me that was like that. And I remember looking at Carissa, and she was like crying. She was like, yeah, this isn't good, hey. And I just kind of broke down, and that sucked so bad. It was like all this work you'd put in for like this opportunity. And it wasn't like 8 weeks to fight Roy. This was the last 13 years that I earned this right to fight this guy. And then it was just gone. It was like,
yeah.
And then after my knee and everything as well, and it was like, oh, it just like kept coming. And then like the worst thing was then because it had come from like my esophagus, they didn't know how big the tear was or like how bad anything was really. Like they didn't know how bad it was. So they were scared to put a camera down there just in case it like made it worse, like ripped it all the way, and then I wouldn't be able to breathe and like all the other complications. So they kept me on a drip, like so I could get fluids and stuff for like 3 days. So after the weigh-in, I had obviously had like a meal or two and had my fluids the night of the weigh-in, but then the next morning I had like a little bite to eat on the way to the hospital, and then I was on a drip for 3 days and didn't get to eat or drink like for 3 days. So I was in hospital for like the next 3 days, and they just like basically kept me waiting. Oh, you'll go home today. Oh, you'll go home today. All the while it was like everybody else was like asking me what the hell was going on. Like they were like, what? Look, you didn't turn up for your own fight. There was like 80 of us that paid to come and watch you fight.
Yeah.
Like, and then there was like all the people from, like different gyms and stuff that were like, where were you? Oh, you scared? Like I heard a rumor that he ate chocolate ice cream, and that's why he didn't fight.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask as well.
I have no idea where that rumor originated, but all I know is I remember hearing it from Brett Benetti on the live stream with Kaylee. So Kaylee,
I remember that. I remember that too. Yeah.
And Brett Benetti goes, oh, I had a rumor that he ate chocolate ice cream. Then he was like speaking to Roy, and he was like, oh, at least you did the right thing, Roy. And I was like, who has told him this? And then I spoke to Kaylee, and Kaylee was like, someone come to ringside and told him that. And I was like, who come to ringside and said that? Like, at this point in the live stream, nobody knew what had happened whatsoever. There was nothing like at all. Gav had said there's been a And then this rumor just started, and I hadn't spoken to anyone either. So somebody had just made that up off the top of their head.
Like, because I remember hearing this kind of shit, like you know, just going around like. Oh, sorry, I think I lost you for a sec there. I remember hearing this kind of shit going around in the aftermath of that, you know, I was aware that there had been, you know, just complications between weigh-in and fight, and you're in the hospital. Yeah. And I remember hearing it as well, like, oh, you know, Max had been eating some stupid shit or something. But like, a lot of people have gotten off. Look, you should be smart after you weigh in, right, and eat the right things. But you know, a lot of people have jumped off the scales and eaten ice cream and shit like that. It doesn't rupture your esophagus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, good. Like the effects will be on your performance. Like, it won't nearly kill you.
Like I said, it was a dietitian that, like, I had her thing to follow after the weigh-in. Like, everything was I weighed everything like to a T. Like, I checked like the size, I checked in the palm the amount of rice I was meant to eat, things like that. Like, everything was done to a T. Like, I did it on purpose. Like, a really good, like, checking everything, and like, it felt like I wasn't rewarded at all for what I did, you know. In fact, it went the other way, and then I copped so much from it, you know. I went down south after I got out of hospital. I was obviously devastated. I went down south with my sister, and then, like, I posted a picture and there was pizza in the picture, and people were messaging me like, oh, you're a bitch, like, you're scared of Roy and that's why you didn't fight. Man, if I was scared of Roy, I wouldn't have took the fight in the first place. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And like, if you were scared, why would you weigh in before you pull out? Like, that just seems like a waste of energy.
Exactly, yeah. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, I messaged Roy several times apologizing, you know, like, and Roy's been pretty cool about it. Like, Roy's been pretty cool. Obviously, he's probably pretty pissed off to begin with.
As you would be.
Yeah,
you know, like, just to not fight, you know, like, but.
But it was just like, he was pretty good about it all, but there's just some other people that had opinions, and, you know, like, there's like one guy who I've never heard of that just like he, like, months later, commenting on my stuff, like, going off at me for it. Like some of the stuff he said, I can't even say, like, out loud. Like, it's pretty, like, out there, like, what he was saying and stuff. So it was just dumb. It's dumb stuff.
And, you know, I mean, like, it's devastating enough to not get that kind of opportunity against Roy, but then to also, as a young guy who's still at this point fairly new on the adult pro, if you will, kind of scene, like, to kind of have a life-threatening injury, you know, framed as something that attempts to kind of call your integrity into question and stuff like that. It's all like, it's not a great addition to an already pretty shitty experience to have people kind of like, I guess what I mean is to go into hospital so suddenly like that, and then come out, like, almost dealing with the idea that you went, like, it's your fault that you were there. It's kind of
and I think that's, like, I suppose that's focusing on the negative though, like, because there was obviously those people, but also, like, for example, there was one person that, like, I wasn't on good terms with at all. Like, didn't speak to them in ages. And then when that happened, he reached out to me and was like, you know, I hope you're all right. And then it totally changed the terms that we were on. Like, we ended up being friends again, like, both pretty cool. So it was like, I suppose it just depends on how you look at it too. Like, there was some good things eventually to come out of it.
Yeah. So then from there, of course, as you mentioned, and I did kind of want to get your sort of story on this, that was supposed to be a comeback, but your comeback from that comeback was against, unless my timeline's wrong, it was Singpayak next.
No, it was Bach. It was Bach then.
It was Bach. Sorry. It was Bach next. But still, same kind of thing. Another, like, you still did take that big step up. And this is one I wanted to get into as well, because you went down for Bach Sukari, who's very classy on hardcore promotions. And this was the start of what I think was a kind of a couple of eye-openers in a row for people about you, because you just walked over Bach. with the first round stoppage. So yeah, tell us about kind of that. What did you kind of know about Bach coming in? What was that like to fight someone of that level and that esteem and get that kind of result?
I think well, fighting back, I knew it was like we took it on just over 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
So it was quite short, but like enough time. And it was like the first fight I had at Legends. I think what people forget though as well is like Zach and even Stephen, like they were both good too. They're just smaller.
Yeah.
Like, and I'd fought loads of people that were really good, and I'd fought Thais in Thailand as well. Like I'd fought some good guys. The thing about Bak was like, yes, he's real classy, but I think there's just he's a bit older, and like the kind of hunger and like want to hurt someone, be there to like really walk through someone. I could see from the start that I had that and he didn't.
Yeah.
So if you watch, like when I started that fight like very different to how I started to fight against Singh, because like I know Singh wants to be there. I know Singh is Channel 7 like stadium champion, and if I try and overwhelm him in the first round, he's just gonna laugh. But with Bak, I could see that as soon as I hit him, he was like shocked by how hard I hit him and how fast I wanted to push the pace of the fight. It was also 3 rounds. And I could see when I hit him, I hurt him. And it was just like, after that, like I didn't let him get his breath back or anything like that. I just went through him. But I suppose, after having so much time off, I was just so ready to just like prove that I was good. Like there should have been so many opportunities before that didn't get to happen. And I was almost like, anything I can get, like any chance I get, I'm going to take it. A day's notice, 2 days notice, like don't care. I need to fight now. I need people to see. And because I almost see it as like, I have a schedule. I worked this hard to get ahead, and I don't want to go falling back into line with everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, I want to excel, and I need to take every opportunity I can get still to stay ahead of the game. And that was like my opportunity to do that.
And was that kind of sort of first round super quick stoppage something you kind of foresaw, or did it sort of just happen that way? Did you have an expectation? Like, did you see that going to the points, or was that one you thought was that kind of to be expected?
Well, I wouldn't say I never really like planned to knock someone out. You know, like I never really planned for first rounds or anything like that. What I hit him with was something we planned in the gym. Like we 100% did that on pads, and we drilled that on pads a few times with like the hook knee, and then like if you watch as well, I body shot first. I like body shot and then hook knee, because he was southpaw. We were setting up that right, like stepping with that right, like kind of round shot, hook or hook head or hook body, followed by my left side, because I know that it's got power. So like, because he was so troubled by the shot that come down the right, I knew the left would land. It just so happened that I was close enough to throw the knee rather than the kick, and it was on his floating rib. So it lined up right, and it was just something we practiced in the gym. But like, I could see once I started the fight that I could stop him. I knew I was going to stop him once I started the fight. Before the fight, I had no clue what to expect. I watched his fight against Ramesh. And like in that fight, he didn't really look like he wanted to fight. Like he looked like he wanted to, I think they fought 3 rounds and they danced it out in the 3rd round.
Okay.
So it didn't really seem like Bak wanted to fight, and Ramesh looked surprised that he lost. Oh no, it was Sugar they danced it out.
I thought the Ramesh fight was 5 rounds.
Ramesh, I can't quite remember as much about the Ramesh fight.
Yeah.
But Bak versus Sugar, they danced it out in the 3rd round, and I think Sugar just thought he'd won, so he didn't care.
Yeah.
And then Bak won. But like they both just backed off round 3. And I was like I was a bit surprised. And I was like, well, this kind of told me that he didn't want to knuckle down and go for it. So
didn't want to do more than he had to.
Yeah. So I really put it on him and like let him know that like he wasn't going to get an easy ride. Yeah. And he kind of crumbled under that pressure, which worked out well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was big fight. A big kind of statement. must have been great after the couple of false starts.
Yeah.
But then I think what you sort of were the talk of the town after was a more recent one against, as we've alluded to a couple of times, was against the former Channel 7 Stadium champion and probably the best on Australian soil at the moment. I think it's a pretty fair argument.
I wouldn't question that.
Yeah. So I guess as a young guy, you know, what's it like to kind of, I guess first of all, is Singpayak a guy that because it was of course a late replacement, originally Albert Tour, I think.
Yeah.
That right? Yeah. So he's supposed to fight out, which is a good fight too. Singpayak comes in as the short nose replacement. Is that a guy that you had on your radar? What's it like to get that name kind of come across? What does that feel like?
It was actually really funny. Like Chris Watt, he had kind of just took over and he was teaching at Legends, like the fight team. And we were training for Albert and stuff, and we'd started the camp and stuff like that. We'd done maybe 3 weeks. And then I came in the morning because he works there too, and he goes to me like, "Oh, can we have a chat?" It's like, yeah. So bad news, Albert's pulled out. It's like, serious. And then he's like, "Well, good news, Singpayak's in." And I was like, yeah, like Singpayak, but which Singpayak? Like, is it Singpayak? And he was like the Singpayak or just some random Singpayak? And he was like, "No, like Singpayak, like the one at PTJ." I was like, cool. Like, I was like, "Well, wicked." And then he was like, "Oh, like, are you sure you want to take it?" I was like, "Of course I want to take it." Like, I was like, "Yes." And I spent like the whole morning just calling people, telling people I was fighting Singpayak, pretty much. Like, I called my dad, called my mum, like, fighting Singpayak. You know, I'm major, I'm fighting Singpayak. Like, I was just super happy to have the fight. It's like somebody that you watch as a kid. You know, watch him growing up and stuff. It's like cool. Channel 7, you know, is one of my favorite stadiums.
Yeah.
And like, there's still, like, if you look at his fights, it's like there's nobody that I've seen him outside of the stadiums that really trouble him. Like in Australia, especially, like, he just looks like he's effortless most of the time when he fights people. You know, like he really just schools half the country with ease. You know, so it was just a cool opportunity to have against him.
Yeah, bar that one fight against Apposite, he barely even breaks a sweat. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even like people can't beat him. It's like they can't make him work. And he's still, like, it's important when you talk about in Singpayak we have a former Channel 7 Stadium champion in Australia. Like, yeah, but we also have a former, like, he's still here to fight. Like, that's super important to like he's not you know, just jumping in for, you know, just holding pads and jumping in for a few bucks. Like, he's still like still fighting classy. Yeah. So I guess, like, I don't know if you know, maybe people would have been, I guess people would have been surprised.
I thought people would have written me off, but I thought they would have written me off more. Like, I thought like, no, I'm quite good, that know that they hadn't seen my full potential. But I thought people would have written me off more than they did. Because if I wasn't me, I would have written me off too. Like, I'd have looked at the fight and been like, who is he? Like, why does he matter? Who's he for? You know? Like, but people tend to, like, actually got behind me quite a bit, especially in WA, because they knew that I was like, it was almost like, oh, Max is going to get more tested than ever. It was like almost like they thought I deserved it a bit more than possibly what people in the eastern states did. Yeah,
and I think, like, one of the most interesting things, I think, for me, and like you mentioned, kind of, well, as we touched on a little bit earlier, speaking about other fights, like you mentioned that, like, you know, you weren't just going to try to push the pace and kind of overwhelm him. I always find it very interesting to watch someone fight someone of Singpayak's level. I think more often than not, what you watch is people trying to just be like, they kind of almost like acknowledge, okay, he's more technical than me, he's better than me, but I'm just gonna, you know, put my foot on the gas. And you know, it's almost like they're not trying to win the technical battle, they're just trying to win, you know, the endurance battle. Like, if I just make him work from the first second. But you played the game with Singpayak.
It actually went the other way, and he tied me out.
Actually,
yeah, because the first 2 rounds, man, like I feel, I don't know if anyone, like, I've had a few people say that they agree with me, and I don't know if I've had most people have said they agreed with me that I won the first 2 rounds. But I think the place that he beat me, he just clinched better than me. And he had this position in the clinch. He just had his hand across my face that, you know, tied me out. He kneed really well. And man, he's a stadium champion. His clinch is going to be good, you know, like, and
knows what he's doing.
Mine on the night wasn't up to scratch. Like, I'm good in the clinch, but that night just wasn't there, and he was better than me in the clinch. So if you watch, there's a real heavy shift from like round 3. Start of round 3, I'm still doing quite well. Towards the end of round 3, it's like I just disappear. It's like my pace just goes out the window. 3, 4, 5, he just batters me until probably the last 20, 30 seconds of round 5 when he decides he don't want to fight me anymore. But yeah, round 1, round 2, I was doing wicked. I managed to sweep him, pull off some real nice like sweeps and kicks and things like that. And I I feel like anybody who was watching up till the start of round 3 probably thought like, oh, you might beat him here. And then obviously the shift, and that just shows how good Singh is. Like, he can change the plan 3, 4 times and find where he can beat you. Because like, if he would have stayed kicking with me, I feel like I'd stayed pretty fresh and I probably would have won. Like, he then switched to southpaw, and when he switched to southpaw, I got more of a lead because I managed to pull off like 4 or 5 low kicks on him, and he realized that wasn't working. And then he got into the clinch and realized, he was like, oh, I can beat him here. And then if you watch like the later rounds, he'll just do anything to get to the clinch. Like, he wouldn't even throw with any technique. He'd just swing, jump into the clinch. Once he had hold of me, had real good position again, and he beat me there, which is obviously something that I've done a lot of work on now since then. So changed a lot then.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's not often on Australian soil that you'll watch Singpayak in a fight where he really has to reach into his bag of tricks. Like, I think for the most part, when you're watching Singpayak plan A, he tends to win for him. You know, he doesn't usually have to go beyond. But yeah, it was very, very interesting to watch Singpayak get challenged to the point where he really kind of has to pull it out, like really kind of, you know, turn it up a little bit, 3, 4, 5. I guess, how did you feel in there with him? Did you kind of think in those? Because I think what was so interesting was that, like we said, you weren't just outworking him, like hitting some sweeps and winning some quite tricky sort of kick battles and things like that. Did you feel like you surprised him?
I feel like I definitely surprised him because he actually come up to me after the fight. Like, I suppose when I went into the fight, a little bit sick, and then when I finished the fight, I got out of the ring and I was so tired that I was just laying on the floor, and like I was slayed like on my back, and I was like I couldn't move. Like, it was like everything was like, all my muscles were like dead on me and limp, and I was like I couldn't move, and I was like gonna throw up, and then I was coughing a bit of blood, and it was I was in a pretty bad way. And then he kind of just kind of popped his head in the room and was like, that was a hard fight. He was like, I'm going to take Panadol now. And I think that was his way of being like, yeah, man, it wasn't a walkover basically. So it felt good to get that kind of respect from him. But in there, the first 2 rounds felt great. And then I hit a wall with my chest and lungs. I couldn't breathe, just couldn't breathe. And I think obviously there's 90% of it being Singh knowing how to tire someone out with his hand across my face and kneeing my stomach over and over again, but also obviously that like element of a little bit of sickness. But yeah, like I feel like it probably would have gone the same way even if I wasn't sick. to be fair to him, with the way he dealt with the situation. But like, 4 and 5 were horrible. I hated it. It was horrible. Like I got to stand up and I come back at like, I did like the stereotypical, I'm fucked to one of the coaches. Like, I was like, man, I can't breathe. Like, it was so bad. Round 5, I stood up and Chris just said to me, like, he's like, whatever you have left, like, I need you to give it now. He's like, anything that you've got left. He's like, I'm not going to give you some like major plan. He was like, whatever you have left, we just need it now. He's like, because like there was nothing else to do really. Like, I couldn't skill the same way I could in the first 2. I was just too lethargic, too tired. He was like, he was like, just whatever you got left, you got to do something. You got to do more. Because round 4 I just got beat up. Like it was like, I did my best in round 5, and I like the last 30 seconds I was strong, so I finished strong. But I was happy to like, I was pretty proud of myself. It was the best I had on that night. Like, not my best me, like not the best I am, but the best I had on that night was in the ring. You know, so I was proud of that.
And then, so of course, shortly after this, as we said, you made the decision to move over to Canberra and start training and working under Kieran. I guess, did kind of having that opportunity to fight Singpayak and have such a good fight against him that ultimately didn't go your way, was it a bit of a moment of like, okay, now I'm almost there. Let's take some steps to get, what are the steps I need to take to kind of get to that next level? Was that kind of the thinking in making such a major move after that fight?
Yeah, well, the day of, obviously I picked Kieran up on the day of the fight.
Yeah.
So like, he flew over on the day of the fight, he cornered Charlie and watched me.
Yeah.
And then we flew back together the next morning to Canberra. Yeah. And I went over for the week. And the next morning, I remember that night and the next morning, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be well enough to get on this plane. Because I was like, I got home and I was just peeing blood. And then the next morning I was peeing blood and I was like, this is horrible. I was like, it was just because, well, I spoke to the doctor and stuff, like, and the doctor was basically saying to me, like, it went away after a couple of days, but he was like, he just needs your liver so hard that it's just like, it's just a mess, like, or my kidneys or something. Like, he's need me internally, like, over and over again. If you watch the fight, you can see the accumulated knees, like, he's like, is this messed you up? So your kidneys are like messed up, or something was messed up, so it made me pee. But then I jumped on the plane anyway, like, even though I wasn't in the greatest shape, on the plane. And then I remember, like, on the plane with Kieran, and we were already going over it, like, we were already talking about the fight, what I didn't do well, what I did do well, what we were like, what do we need to work on, like, it was that talk straight away. It was like, what do we need to work on? This is how we're going to change this is how we're going to make this better. And it was like just that talk from the start, and it was just like kind of like symmetry, that kind of I don't know,
a bit of a natural fit.
Yeah, it was a natural fit, like, straight away. He knew, we agreed on everything that I needed to fix straight away. Most of it was like clinch related stuff, but just a couple of other things as well. And then getting there, like, I was like, before the end of the week, I was already teaching at the gym. Like, I just kind of helped out here and there.
Yeah.
And it just felt natural to teach there and help there. And it was just like, just felt super natural. I think I suppose it did, like, make me go, like, he's ready to take me on. He's ready for these, he's ready to corner me against Singpayak. He's ready to corner me against, he's got no fear of that. Like, he doesn't, he's ready to go and have me fight whoever, wherever, whenever.
He's thinking as big as I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're on the same scale.
Yeah, which is important, right? You need that alignment in.
And I'd seen him do it with Josh too. Like,
of course,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, that does kind of bring us to today. So, I mean, working now, as we said, we touched on it, big kind of, you sort of overhauled your whole life in the interest of getting yourself over there to Canberra. I guess what I want to get into is like, what does the future hold? You know, you mentioned at the start there was the talk of Boat and Petchyindee wanting to get you to one championship. Is one championship the goal? And kind of, are there any dream fights out there in the world for you? Who do you look at like, I really want to fight that person?
I think, I mean, I have a few goals like that, like, like one glory, things like that. Like, happy to fight any of those, you know, like, whatever opportunity arises, I'm happy to go with. Some of the fighters that I dream of fighting are probably more on one. Like the people I grew up watching, the people I want to beat and stuff like that. So I suppose like like right now, I suppose that you'd want to beat the guy to beat, like Nongo, you know, that type of person. But like anyone really, like I want to fight to the best I can. I want to be the champion of, like, the weird thing at the moment is like you don't know what the champion of the champion to be is. Like, you know, like a few years ago, it would have been like, oh, I want to go and win a lumpini belt, or like I want to be one of the only fighters to ever win a Rajadamnern belt as a foreigner. That was one of my goals. Like I wanted to get foreigners back in Channel 7. I wanted, you know, that type of, I had those goals. They were all Thailand goals. But like the sport evolves every day in Muay Thai. Like then as well, like there was no money either. Like money didn't, there was no money, like, well, at least in my head. But now I feel like I do value money when it comes to fights, because the bigger money is the bigger fights. Like it kind of, that's how it works. And so like it's more gravitated to now towards like the top fights are your one championship fighters, like in Muay Thai at least, you know, and your K1 fighters in Glory and places like that. Obviously in Australia it's like Rebellion, and so it's like the goals have shifted, and I suppose I want to be the champion of whatever's relevant when I get there.
And that changes a lot, right? Like no one's goal 5 years ago was one championship.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like,
So it's like, it depends, like what if tomorrow some other organization pops up that becomes the best in the world? Because that's how it felt when one did. Like it felt like one just appeared out of nowhere. Yeah.
And one was really kind of the first foreign, not the first organization with wide international exposure that had real Thailand buy-in, like actually got genuinely elite fighters from like those major camps. Can be, of course it is kind of not, you know, it's Asian owned, isn't it? It's not like a promotion in America, but it's widely internationally broadcasted. And those camps, like you know, Petchyindee BM1, PK Chai, these types of gyms, they can be very difficult to get anywhere outside of those Thai stadiums.
So it's like, to I suppose one that's pretty outstanding is like I want to be the top of the WBC rankings. Like that's one that's going to be like WBC world champion. That's like a set in stone goal that I've had from the start, you know. I wouldn't say I'm so much worried about WMC, like more WBC orientated. If I fight for a WMC title, I 100% would, like, and the organization's great, but my focus on the WBC. With the ranking system being there and everything.
It's the way things are leaning at the moment.
Like I think that's one place I'd like to look, but also like I think the end goal for me is to be like in the big top 5, like of the foreigners. You know, like I suppose one from this, you know, like your Alamos's. I want to be up there with your Liam Harrisons, like those type of people. I want, you know, your Danny Bills, your Raymond Deckers. I want people to talk about all those people and be like, oh, what if Max fought him when they were in their prime? Like, I want that conversation to happen. You know, like your Cristiano
like a generational
versus Pele kind of conversation. Like, I want to be in that conversation when I retire.
I like that a lot. Yeah, and as we kind of look, we'll start to kind of wrap up. I always go over time. It's just my style. But I did have one question kind of that I'd be really interested to get your take on, in that we've talked a lot about kind of some, quite major moves, that impact your whole life largely. You decided to go from one side of the country to the other, of course, recently. But even kind of back in WA, you made that move from training with your dad to training at Legends Academy. Talk a little bit, if you will, about having that experience of kind of having to make the decision that, you need to kind of leave the environment that you're in, I guess, to kind of achieve your goal. Because in the fight game in general, we talk a lot about, loyalty, and there's that kind of, people can not really want to leave where they are, especially kind of you're in that situation more so because you've got, you're training with your dad. What's that experience like, and kind of what advice would you give, I suppose, not what advice would you give, I guess, even to yourself, as you start to wrestle with these things, in making decisions that are going to further your career?
Yeah. I think that, like, obviously moving from Legends to Muay U was like, I hadn't been at Legends that long. And like Chris, who was like my main coach at the time when I left, and Daniel and stuff, they kind of, like, I said, like, look, I'm going, and they were like, yeah, we understand. It's super easy for them to understand. And like, as far as training partners, everything like that, when I had trained with my dad since I was 5 years old, up until I was 19 years old. It's like 18, 19. And so for him and I, that was a very difficult transition. I think that the hard part is, like, man, I'll always appreciate everything my dad did for me. And I think he's a brilliant trainer. Like, I think he's amazing. But like, the plan was always for me to go. Eventually, like, but the plan was for me to go to Petchyindee, like to go to whatever big gym in Thailand and live there and that type of thing. And when that kind of changed and things, it was a lot harder for us to have that, like, transition, for me to go somewhere else. Like, I was growing up and wanted a job full time in Muay Thai, and like, that wasn't really an opportunity where we were, like, at my dad's gym. My dad's gym is like I think there's like 30 members at my dad's gym altogether, and the fight team, there's like 6, and it's mainly made up of like, for example, like, there's Bryony, and the only other, Josh retired like a couple of years ago now. So really at the time there was Brant and I that were the only 2 like male experienced fighters that were in the gym all the time. And like, Brant had like 14 fights, I think, or something like that. And I was training for Roy, and I'd had like 120, so it was like, it was a real hard point for me to transition from there. But I think something that I would say to people is, like, and I was having this conversation with David, that like, people in Muay Thai think that loyalty is like you have to stick like by somebody forever, and it's like you have to follow them to your death. And man, that's so stupid. Like, I think that's so dumb. Like, I feel like everybody knows I respect my dad, and everybody knows that I love him, and everyone knows that I'm so appreciative of everything he ever did for me. But that doesn't mean that I can't grow and go elsewhere. Like, David had a similar thing where he left and come to Muay U, and like, that doesn't mean that he's disrespectful or doesn't care, or like, and I think that a lot of people need to hear that to leave somewhere isn't, it's about how you approach the situation. It's like, you leave on the right terms, and you say it how it is, but with respect. Don't tiptoe and hide things. And Pinky has a good rant on it. Like, he does. Just leave the right way. You don't have to stay somewhere that you don't want to be. Even if you just don't want to be there, you can leave with respect. Like you're not required to be anything. You're not required to stay somewhere just because you've been there a long time, or like. I think I needed to hear that, like, because I felt like I was betraying my own dad, leaving and things like that, you know, like, which I shouldn't have felt that way. But I feel like a lot of people probably go through it because their trainers are like father figures anyway.
Yeah, it's tricky. And it will be, like, leaving any environment that you've been in a long time will be tricky, but it doesn't have to be this big kind of emotional. I mean, like, maybe it will be emotional, but it doesn't have to be this, like, kind of hideous breakup kind of situation.
Yeah, you're not in a relationship with them. Not married.
Especially if advancing your career is somewhere else. It's just kind of, you know.
I suppose it comes into a point where, like, sometimes, like, you get people that, like, think they've outgrown their trainer, and the trainer doesn't think they've outgrown them, and things like that. So that makes the situation more difficult.
Yeah.
But if you have valid reasons that you agree with your trainer on for leaving, which, like, in both examples I did, a lot of it was to do with, like, training partners and things like that, and also opportunities for my job, and things like my career and stuff like that, and the management also, like, Kieran is a good businessman. He knows, like, he can get me the best opportunities. You know, obviously I left WA. We like to come to a state where we can't fight as much at the moment. But, like, Kieran,
but in normal times,
like, he has almost has connections to do that. You know,
he's got a good network.
No, my dad has a full-time job and runs the gym.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit.
So he's got a lot on his plate, you know.
Yeah.
But to have somebody who's able to spend all day on the phone making the right career moves for me, just because I'm there, like, is a massive advantage. And so if you got valid reasons to leave, then it takes the emotion out of things. Like, everyone has to understand the facts.
Absolutely. Of course, you know, we're sure it will be a positive move. We just haven't really been able to see it just yet.
Well, there's plenty in the pipelines.
Plenty in the pipelines. Looking forward to hearing about it, and we're sure we'll speak again, kind of get to break down some future fights and stuff like that. Everyone, especially after that Singpayak fight, is, I think, very, very excited to see you fight again and see you start to pop up on the likes of Rebellion and things like this. So I promised myself I would. I said this the last time. I can't control the time myself, but, you know, like we said at the start, you know, when someone's good to talk to, we just want to do more. People can pause it when they want to. But we'll finish off with just giving you the chance to give any shout outs to sponsors, anyone you want to drop a little bit of love to. Take some time.
Awesome. Obviously I've got my sponsors, Arwood, my gear sponsor, and shout out to Mandy Hopper as well, the strength and conditioning in Perth. I'll always shout out my dad's gym, so Free Lions Gym in Perth as well. They've been, like, really, really growing. They've got, like, six first timers before the end of the year now, so I'm really, like, excited, and they're all, like, in their teens, so that'll be wicked. So it's wicked for my dad towards the end of the year to have so many young people coming through. Obviously Muay U as well. Got to shout out Muay U and the guys. But I think that's everyone. Well, not everyone, but, like,
not absolutely everyone. But...
I can't be here all day. I can't shout everyone out. Shout out my mum as well.
And where is the best place to keep up with your career? Of course, we'll chuck some links in the description, but you're more active on Instagram. You've got a Facebook page. Where do we keep up with that? TikTok?
Instagram's probably the place. I think that's where most people are. But I think my Instagram is Max_McVicker. If you type in Max McVicker, it should come up, I think. Same on Facebook, Max McVicker. I think that's the place to find them.
Oh, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, sir. Hopefully you and I both had a lockdown pretty soon, but we are all looking forward to hearing some fight news from yourself over there in Canberra. Hope to talk to you again soon, and take care of yourself, mate.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.